Hey everybody, this is the audio to accompany my newsletter around It's a Lot Right Now, or alternative title, The Rise of Authoritarianism. There's something I've kind of been noticing increasingly, and I wonder whether you can recognize this as well. People are overwhelmed. We're carrying a lot. This is one part pace and another part volume, and it's impacting us mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. I didn't want to write about AI, but it's definitely one of the impacts. So, researchers call this cognitive load coping, and I think it's one of the big skills for the next decade. Knowledge workers, leaders, like just about everyone, if we're honest, needs to get better at it. And I reckon it's not a side issue anymore. I think it's the main game. So here's a prompt like worth sitting with as a thought leader. What in my intellectual property set, like what in my teachings, can I share to help people manage overload? Because when people are overloaded, they reach for shortcuts. They want quick fixes, certainty, and someone else to carry the mental burden for a while. I kind of noticed this the other day myself. I wanted to shut things down, to make some quick decisions, to kind of cut through the mess, to simplify things into categories I could manage. I was overloaded. I had too much input, too many competing priorities, and I really had no clear signal. And it's in those moments, for me, my thinking becomes very binary. I use a cognitive distortion called polarized thinking, and a particular version of it called all or nothing. And this all or nothing pattern, I sort of come to know very well. When I'm overwhelmed, I want things to be sorted, not open ended. I want to act and I don't want to sit with the mess. And this is what psychologists call a need for cognitive closure. And this is something Kruglansky sort of introduced in 2004. It's the mental shortcut we reach for when the complexity of the world feels like too much. And when we're in that space, we don't just seek clarity, we sometimes start to mistake simplicity for the truth. So, lately, I've been applying my own advice and trying to look at what's going on in me through the lens of what's happening around me. In this case, I started reflecting on the global rise of authoritarianism. As I was doing that, I came across a line from documentarian David Marples, where he said, tyranny is the deliberate removal of nuance. And I reckon that's spot on for the moment we find ourselves in, right? It reminded me that when our capacity for nuance shrinks, individually or collectively, we open the door for more rigid, controlling forms of leadership. Our need for clear lines and simple answers can make us vulnerable to like all or nothing stories. And they feel safe, but they cost us our freedom to think. We're seeing more people support authoritarian style leaders, more suspicion of democratic processes, more appetite for strong, decisive messaging over dialogue and debate, a gradual loss of nuance, and that's not great for our species. Looking at this through different lenses, such as my personal collapse, cognitive closure, cognitive load coping, and the rise in authoritarianism sort of helped me see the pattern with more depth. It was a way of holding a bigger space instead of collapsing things down. So when I catch myself reaching for quick closure, one of the most helpful things I can do is ask, how might others I respect make sense of this? Not to defer to them, but to maybe to expand the frame. And I kind of do it like sitting with a circle of thinkers. These are people whose work has shaped how I understand the world, and I kind of want to invite their perspectives into my, my thought palace, into the room of my mind. Even if it's just a mental exercise, it slows me down. It invites curiosity, and it stops me rushing to the comfort of a single story. So I was thinking of Yuval Noah Harari, and he might point out that we're living through a collapse of shared narratives. The old story of liberal progress, rights, and cooperation has kind of broken down. And in its absence, people have turned to simplified answers and strong leaders. So I might use this with clients who are stuck in old stories to help them sort of name what's gone missing so they can build a new story with more honesty. Ken Wilber, the founder of integral theory, would say that in times of stress, we regress. And our capacity for world-centric thinking gives way to the safety of tribe, identity, and black and white distinctions. Authoritarianism rides the wave of that retreat. So I might use Wilber's lens when I see a group slipping into us versus them. It helps sort of reframe the work as growth and not just conflict. Bernardo Kastrup, what is he? He's got a physics degree and a philosophy doctorate, like two doctorates. sees it as a metaphysical drift. When we disconnect from our inner life, he'd probably say we're seeking control and meaning outside of ourselves. And he'd probably propose, if you read his work on analytical idealism, that that's fertile ground for power structures that promise sort of identity, certainty, and order. And I might use this to sort of remind people that the work of reflection isn't indulgent, that it's actually protective. It keeps us from outsourcing our sense of self. He talks about this a lot in his piece called The Idea of the World. I love Brandon Bayes, and she might ask what emotional pain is being avoided, what unfelt grief, fear, and frustration, don't disappear. They shape our politics, our behaviours, our choices. And sometimes the desire for someone to take charge is really just a longing to feel safe again. So I might bring this into mentoring when big decisions feel reactive. Often it's the unfelt emotion that needs attention first. Marianne Williamson from Return to Love and Course in Miracles, she'd probably see a spiritual crisis where love is absent and suggest that that's where fear rushes in. And fear, when it goes unexamined, becomes blame, attack, division, which is kind of like everything that authoritarianism feeds on. And I might use this to help people see that breakdowns in trust or compassion are rarely just practical. There's a sign that there's kind of a bigger relational ground that needs tending. And what each of these masters do, what each of these lenses do, is they bring something useful. Like, none of them hold the entire truth, but together they help paint a more complete picture than my cognitive closure desiring monkey mind. And of course, this doesn't mean that the structural, political, or economic levers don't matter. They do. But for many of us working at the human-to-human level, just helping people hold complexity and reconnect to their own clarity is a vital part of the bigger shift. Sometimes building perspective is the work. So what does this mean in practice? I think if you're an advisor, a mentor, a thought leader, someone that others turn to, it means being willing to hold space without rushing to solve. It means resisting the temptation to package up complexity into clean solutions too quickly. And it means helping others to do the same. In moments like this, the role of a thought leader isn't to offer instant clarity. It's to help people to think, to feel, and maybe relate more consciously. And that starts by noticing where in ourselves we might be rushing to resolution and then gently choosing instead to stay with the work. I suppose there's just an audio bonus getting off script a little bit. I also think that Robert Keegan's work on Out of Our Mind from 2004 speaks to this as he talks about like the self-transforming mind. So if you want to do some research on that, that could help. So a reflective call to action this week, maybe just when you're looking for certainty, ask yourself, what am I trying to simplify too quickly? The next question for us as thought leaders is, what in my IP or practice could help others manage overload better? Whose voice might help me hold this concept differently? And what's a question I'm willing to sit with just a little longer than resolve too soon? Because your perspective, which is what we're going for here, doesn't always come from having the answer. Sometimes it comes from being willing to ask again or just wait a little bit longer.